الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته and welcome to our daily fiqh hour as we enter what is going to be the last week of Sha'ban before we start our Ramadan. Again, this morning I was just sort of finalizing the poster, inshallah, for the schedule that we will have once Ramadan starts. But we still have obviously several days on this side before we finish off. You're leaving aside Sunday for announcing the schedule and also obviously potentially announcing Ramadan. And on Saturday, we're going to focus Masail on Siyam, fasting. So that's going to be dedicated to that. And so today is sports, okay? An unusual one, an interesting one. And this came, and the reason this came from a sister, which the reason why I mentioned that, it's not that it's important. The reason why I mentioned that is because I'm trying to encourage more sisters to suggest themes. So at least we get a balance. And this is about that, are sports allowed as a profession? For example, football, cricket, can't read my own notes. Darts, I always raised an eyebrow to darts. I don't know, is that considered as a sport? Swimming, Olympics, Olympic Games, and in essence, making an income from it. So let's explore this from an income perspective. Firstly, whenever games, if we can call that, were performed in the prophetic era and the times which came after, and then these were usually games that would lead to some practical application. So if it was, for example, horse riding or horse racing, then that was to master horse riding, master being able to gallop at pace on a horse. And that was a skill, because obviously knowing how to ride a horse, knowing how to manage a horse, training your horse to become faster, knowing when to kind of put your foot down, so to speak, knowing when to stay on the shoulder of the person who's in the lead and pick the right moment to go ahead. This is a skill. And obviously that skill could be utilized in day-to-day life, especially as a mujahid. Similarly, things like, for instance, wrestling, that again, or hand-to-hand combat, was again a useful exercise. Why was it useful exercise? Well, it kept you fit, it kept you strong, because not only do you just do the sparring, which is what was done, but you also do things which lead to the sparring, which is techniques, strengthening the upper body, strengthening the legs, increasing your stamina. So all these things would then eventually lead to the actual act of sparring and the ability to throw a person to the ground and pin him and hold him, and obviously cause him, pain or even, cause him death if need be. And the purpose again for that was that it could be applied in day-to-day when it came to, again, the mujahideen. The other type of play and entertainment that was permitted was one when a man, spends time with his wife and his children. So he may be sort of, playing around, racing, running, whatever. So we find that whenever we see games, sports, call them what you like, being mentioned, then this was always done with a purpose in mind. As we move on now, there's always been people who have entertained other people. So, for instance, there have been, court jesters that acted as comedians, and they would entertain the king and his, the people who, his company, the people who would sit around him. You see, very similar now in the modern world, as a stand-up comic whose job is to make people laugh. And, there used to be chariot racing and things like that, which, usually slaves used to do. So what used to be a role that was played by the lesser in society and was observed by the rich has now kind of gone full circle, because now the people who are actually doing the sports or doing the events are very wealthy. So a footballer, for example, is getting paid whatever, 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 pounds a week, if not 100,000 pounds a week for the absolute elite sportsman. So that's the kind of money that sportsmen are getting now, sportswomen are getting. which was unheard of because usually the people who performed were the lower level of society and they were being watched by the elite. Now it's the other way around. Now the people who we're watching actually are more wealthy than us. They're more powerful than us. They can do things that we can't do. And that's just the way society has gone now, because we've become a very entertainment orientated society. We've become a society that wants to be entertained, that wants to spend. And I was just speaking to somebody the other day, when I was a lad growing up, football used to come on terrestrial TV, as in on your normal TV channel that used to watch. Match of the Day used to be, way back in the day. Now, you find that you'll struggle to get any football on terrestrial TV, and you'll be paying £30 subscription for this company, £20 subscription for that company, £30 subscription for that company, £30 subscription for that company. So you end up paying like £100, £120 just to be able to watch football matches. But the reason why that exists is because there's an appetite in us to be entertained, to be amused, to be to watch things, to preoccupy our time, in fact to take up our time. So what used to be used as a bit of leisure, as a bit of cooling off, as a little bit of switching off, where people would work 7 days a week literally, or at least 6 days a week, and then use a bit of that money to go watch a game and shout and scream, and that's it. Now we actually want to be entertained continuously all the time. We don't want a life of normality. We want a life of escapism. We just want to. So that's, I think it's important to mention that when it comes to doing anything or earning anything, then there has to be a halal employment. Because the question specifically with regards to sports was that could it be used as a profession? Meaning, could you be a sports person as a profession, as in earn money from it? So whenever we look at earning money, it's got to be via a halal route. We cannot earn money via a haram route. That's been forbidden for us. So when it comes to any sports, we have to look to see whether there's any act in there which is permissible or impermissible. So for example, let's take something like say cricket, for example. So cricket, people say, oh yeah, but cricket lasts for, if you're playing test cricket, or even if you're playing a short version of cricket, it lasts for 7, 8 hours, 9 hours, whatever. Yeah, but when we work for 7, 8, 9 hours. So that's their job. So obviously there's nothing in cricket as such, unless you cannot pray your salah, and but that's like any job. So there's nothing really that prevents a person playing cricket as a sports person, as somebody who's going to earn money from it as well. Similarly with football, again, the only issue with football that comes up is in the Hanafi school, the thigh is considered as part of the aura. So obviously if there's a Hanafi football player, then obviously his thigh can be considered as part of an aura. I guess the way he can circumvent that as such is if he wears a longer version of sort of, shorts on the inside of his shorts, and have slightly longer, or as long as if there's some legal permissibility of application of that. Unless obviously he's adhering to another legal school, which would consider the aura of his to just his private regions and not include within that his knees and his thighs. Again, football is an hour and a half long per match. And therefore, again, he would have to just be considerate about his prayer times, where he can pray, when he can pray. But otherwise, the game in itself, there's nothing he's doing which is haram, in the sense of that he's committing a haram act. So there'd be no kind of restrictions there, apart from, like I mentioned, which is the aura. Boxing obviously is problematic, is boxing, because one cannot strike somebody or cause damage to somebody unless he's in jihad. And obviously, when a person is boxing in the UK, he's not performing jihad. It's a sport. But a sport which can cause injury to somebody is problematic. Okay, it is problematic. Striking somebody in the face is problematic. Punching somebody to the ground is problematic. Trying to knock the other person out as a sport is problematic. So these are issues. Okay, whenever we get into combat sports. When it comes to something which is less so, and either wrestling, or even maybe you could maybe possibly squeeze something like MMA into it, possibly. because there's obviously a strike element in MMA, but there's also a lot of groundwork, a lot of holds, a lot of wrestling, sort of jiu-jitsu style wrestling. So there is some element there, which is obviously striking your opponent, and that's the issue. Where a person is trying to stroke, but it's not like boxing, where boxing literally in order to bring that person down and knock, to trying to knock that person out. In fact, knocking people out is pretty tends to be is either a submission or that person bad state of affairs where the fight will no longer continue. But don't get me wrong, there is clearly an element, and you'll see the damage in which a fighter will do to the other fighter. The damage is pretty serious. The damage is pretty painful. It's not like that the person's face is literally changed as a result of it. Black eyes, broken nose, broken fingers. It's not something which is just they're not playing tic-tac-toe or something. Some may argue that some of these things, like boxing, for example, like MMA possibly as well, has done more for dawah than possibly other things have done. Like Muhammad Ali is a very famous boxer and everybody knows him. And his conversion to Islam was something which had an impact on society. Similarly, we saw when Khabib was involved in MMA, it had a very positive impact on Islam, and people saw, the religion of Islam on an international level. And that's one of the things which sports does that at the moment nothing else does, which it takes the religion of Islam on an international platform. So that there is that side of it. The second thing that I want to make a point of is because of the political situation that Muslim countries find themselves in, they are, always, at the wrong end of victory. But when it comes to sports, there is an opportunity where Muslims do succeed, and it gives a strength of confidence, and it gives a strength of conviction, it gives a strength of motivation, it gives a sense of aspiration, of success. So that has to be taken into consideration as well, in terms of the international platform that it has to make dawah, in terms of the many people have a big issue obviously when these fights are held in Dubai or in Qatar or in Saudi, and say, oh well, surely we should be using our money for better products and for better things. However, I'm not necessarily defending these countries, but just it's only correct to be fair, is that they do then have kind of religious fairs going on at the same time. So because you get a lot of people, non-Muslims, traveling over to these events, they do then sort of, have a little museum, wander around, look at this, look at that. And there is that possibility of dawah. So that has to be, mentioned and taken into consideration. I think that's most of the sports that were mentioned that I've done. So really, just to summarize, it depends on the type, what activity that you are involved in, whether that activity is permissible or not. If the activity is not permissible, then obviously it makes the actual sports that you're involved in problematic. If the activity itself is fine, then it's a halal means of making money, then there's nothing wrong with that, as long as it doesn't interrupt salah, it doesn't interrupt your acts of worship, things of that nature. But I do think it's also important to take into consideration how sports has this international platform, which very few other things have. And therefore, it does give an insight into what this way of life is, and what people do and what Muslims do. And as I said, it gives that sense of victory. I remember when I think it was Morocco made it to the semi-final, possibly, or at least the quarterfinals of the last World Cup. And the Muslims were feeling very optimistic and confident and feeling proud of being Muslim again, because of the fact that they saw a Muslim country reach only as far as the semi-final. Bearing in mind that non-Muslim countries have been winning the World Cup since its inception, but at least there was a Muslim country that went as far as getting to that point. So sometimes it does give that drive, it does give that enthusiasm, because we're always looking for a hero, and that kind of hero aspect helps. So that was the theme that I said that I would cover this time round. So next, what we'll do, inshallah, is let's pick up some questions that have come in via our socials here. So this is coming in via YouTube right now. So, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. When making the intention to fast in Ramadan after Maghrib, should one intend to fast today as the next night comes in after Maghrib? Yes, that's what you're doing. You're making near to fast after Suhoor. That's all you're saying. That I'm making near to fast, after Suhoor, the next day. So you will say the next day because it's night. So you will say, because you will fast during the day. So you will say, the next day, which actually means the day you are in, but it is technically the next day that comes in. So you don't necessarily get caught up too much onto that. You're making a near to fast in daylight hours. And as long as you keep it like that, that would be absolutely fine. Did the Prophet ﷺ pray 20 rakats of Taraweeh? Yes, the Prophet ﷺ, according to the four schools, did pray. Some will say that it's not unanimous amongst the four schools, but clearly within the Hanafi school, yes, the Prophet ﷺ prayed 20 rakats Taraweeh. Bear in mind that I think it's at least 2 nights in which the Prophet ﷺ was followed by the companions. And then on the third night, I'm sure, but don't quote me on it, I'm pretty sure on the third night, he did not come out for prayer. And when he did not come out for prayer, the Sahaba sort of carried on their own. So remember, the Prophet ﷺ did not perform or intended not to perform these in Jama'ah, in congregation. He wanted to avoid doing that in order to avoid a burden coming onto the community of the Muslims. Salam. Okay. Assalamu alaikum. Salam doesn't mean anything, my brother. I normally give a portion of zakat to family back home. This year, the family were donated money to build a house, amounting to about 2,500. Are they still eligible for zakat? The money was donated about 4 months ago, and they have no other form of income. If the money is still in their possession, then clearly that type of money, which in their country, I'm assuming you're from Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, just by your name, it is an assumption, but let's go with that. Then 2,500 converted to the rupees or the takas or whatever it is going to be a lot of money. Okay, a lot of money. So they're going to be well above their nisab if they have some of that money left. So what you'll have to do is check. And it's not necessarily about the income, it's what they have in their possession. Income is irrelevant. You could earn £1 million a day, but you could spend £1 million a day and you don't give no zakat because you don't have no wealth. Or you could earn £20 a day, but you save £18 and you only spend £2 and you could give zakat because by the end of the year, you've got X £100. So it doesn't really matter about what you're earning. It's what you have in your possession when your nisab date comes around. Assalamu alaikum. Why have we been told not to play cards? I could say no, money is involved and it's also helping me mentally somehow. The cards issue comes up because usually they're associated with games of chance. So in essence, gambling. So like die have been considered to avoid, die being the singular of dice, because of the fact that it's used in games of chance. So those tools which are used in games of chance are what we are told to avoid. That's the reason why cards, because cards is also involved predominantly in games of chance. It's not necessarily a skill. Even when there is some element of skill, which is poker, what you're doing is you're bluffing. So you're lying or you're giving the impression that you have certain things. So therefore, there's nothing really one could argue that they are, that there is benefiting them. If obviously this person there's a game which involves trying to determine adding cards up, so you have all the diamonds and the hearts, and you're adding the numbers as you're putting them down, then that's a different thing altogether. For children, remember, children are playing. So children waste a lot of time playing. There's no, you don't really have to structure playing. So when a girl is playing with a doll, It's not like, that's good. It's not like we have to account for her time that, oh, you spent 3 hours with that doll. Now put that doll away and start learning your arithmetic or something like that. So if children are playing with cards, it's not a problem. When adults are playing with it, it's a problem. The other thing as well to bear in mind is certain games, especially now we see games on PCs and things like that, are very time consuming. They're not games that you can kind of, spend in half an hour, and that's it. They're literally, you got to give, you have to, dedicate and commit maybe 3, 4, 5 hours a day on a daily basis. Some people actually live in these worlds, okay? These, game worlds, these virtual worlds. And they're just, that's what they're on, sort of, not, I won't say 24/7, but as soon as they get home, that's it. They're bashing the game. Because the more time you spend in that virtual you get, and the more tokens or credits you get, you can get, means the bigger you become and the more powerful you become. The more powerful you become, that means that you can succeed more in the game, which is circle. Because at the end of the day, that's why games are constructed in that way. So you spend more time on them. And now, obviously, because everybody is very commercially orientated, the aim is that you eventually start buying stuff like packs, so that you can go into stores and buy a bigger gun or buy a bigger sword or buy a flamethrower or something like that. So this is trying to just take your time, because we don't value time. You see, we think time is free. Okay, that you've been given time and it's free. I don't have to pay for it. Whereas you order a burger, you're paying £20, but or £10, whatever. But when you got time, you think, I got to kill this because it's free. But what you fail to realize is that the time you have, which in essence is a part of your life, it's a grain of your life, you can't even buy on the internet. You cannot go and say when your death comes that, oh, I need another 6 months. You can, even if you had £1 billion, 10 billion, 1 trillion, you could not buy another 6 months. If you're going to die right now, you're going to die right now. So hence the reason why, unfortunately, we don't value time. And we think time is free. So we'll gladly spend 4 hours just, killing it. I'm bored. I need to do something to kill time. We use that phrase. But what you're doing is the most valuable asset that you have. You are just literally burning it in front of you. Assalamu alaikum wa alaikum salam. Can we do things like secret shaykh for Eid? It is a way of exchanging gifts, basically copying secret Santa. Jazakallah. The thing is, shaykh don't give gifts. Shaykhs receive gifts. So that would be problematic from the word go. The shuyukh, the ulama, aren't ones who should be giving gifts. The shuyukh, the ulama, should be receiving gifts. So there's nothing wrong in, saying that, oh, we can arrange a way to give gifts by doing it this way. The only problem you have, you see, is that gifts should be given openly in order so the person knows who they've received the gift from. I don't know the full details of Secret Santa, but gifting is something you do openly and you let the person know that you're gifting them. There's an actual purpose to gifting, which isn't just like it's a game. So that's why you should gift your father. You should gift your mother. You should gift your husband. You should gift your wife. You should gift your children, and they should know it's coming from you. And they in return should gift you. But this, as I recall, as I said, I might be not 100% correct, but Secret Santa is usually in a workplace where people get gifts for each other, so that means everybody gets something. But the way they do it is all names are thrown in a hat or something, and then you pull out a name and you're supposed to give a gift to that person. I think that's what it is. If I'm wrong, you can correct me. But the issue is, you see, is giving hadiyah. The Prophet ﷺ mentions that gift to one another because it increases love. So in Islam, there's always an aim for doing something. There's always a purpose for doing something. It's never done just to, find an innovative way around of doing something or make sure that everybody receives a gift. It's done in this way in order to increase love between people. As you know, when someone gets you something, you naturally feel happy. You naturally feel, that, oh, thank you very much. You want to, you appreciate this person. Your relationship with this person becomes stronger because it's just natural, isn't it, when people look out for each other and people help each other and people gift each other. So therefore it should be done openly Nothing to do with doing things secretly. Should be done openly, and the person who's receiving the gift should know who they've received the gift from. So let's give a couple of minutes for any other questions that we have. My child has been invited to a play center by his friend for his birthday. Is this Islamically allowed? Hestia, I have at great length discussed birthdays. So if you wouldn't mind, just search on the, or go on to the YouTube that you're watching right now, and you will find that inshallah in there. Because what we want to do is, when I realize that we're getting to kind of repetition of questions, then I'll know that we have now saturated for the community, and then I can obviously start looking at my time as well. So please do find that question. I have discussed birthdays. You'll find our team, Allah bless them, spend hours listening to me. And then what they do is they then timestamp each question. They'll say what the question is, and they'll timestamp it. So whenever you're looking for it, you just look across. Oh, there it is. Click on it, and off you go. And I want more people to be using the YouTube channel as a resource, because as I get busy with other things, I want this to be my sadaqah jariyah, so that people are using it all the time. So the more it's being used as a resource, the more you're sharing it with family and friends, the more ajr I get. I know you touched on it a while back, but can you touch on why jinn possession is not a real thing Islamically? Haris, I like the way you had your little clause at the beginning of that. I have touched upon that. And so again, I would say to you that please do go find that on our YouTube, and inshallah that you will find it all there. Assalamu alaikum wa alaikum salam. Just to follow up on the zakat question, would the family need to be above the nisab amount for a lunar year, or is it as long as they have it in their possession? They, if they have that in their possession, then you cannot give them zakat. For them to give zakat, they would have to have nisab at both ends of the year. Okay, so if they have above nisab, you cannot give them zakat. But for them to give zakat, they would have to have nisab or above at both ends of the year. That it doesn't matter what happens in the middle of the year. It can drop, it can go up, and all the rest of it. But it matters what happens at the ends of the year. Okay. Hope that makes sense. as soon as they reach the nisab amount, they become ineligible for zakat. That's correct. Yeah, you could say that. Absolutely. That as soon as they reach the nisab amount, they are now ineligible to receive zakat. They cannot receive zakat. And what that date will do, whenever that date is reached, and remember, you know, I know we're using the plural here as they, but you have to look at as to who becomes the owner of this money. So this 2,500, is this going to the father of the house? Is this going to the husband and wife split between the middle? Is it going to the husband and wife and the 3 children? How is that split going to occur? So that's what you have to look at. But because each person is responsible for their own zakat, it is not a collective responsibility. So in my house, me, my wife, my son, my daughter, we're all adults. So we all have individual responsibility to give zakat. They can't just say, oh, dad, you know, you sort it out, because each person is individually responsible. Yes, I can do the administrative task of arranging their zakat to be distributed as the father, if they ask me to, but I'm not responsible to give their zakat. That's their responsibility. Okay. So as soon as a person anywhere on the planet who is baligh reaches nisab, that's it now. They make a note of that date, Islamic date. They make a note of it. And now it doesn't matter what happens throughout the year, up and down, up and down, up and down, as long as it doesn't hit 0, up and down. And then when that same date comes the following year, they check their account. And if they are still nisab or above, they give zakat. Whereas on the other side is that as soon as they hit nisab, let's just say normally they were recipients of zakat, but as soon as they hit their nisab date, then as soon as they hit nisab, they are no longer recipients of the zakat. So whilst I'm waiting for any other last minute questions, let me tell you what tomorrow or the next fiqh hour is going to be. So in the next fiqh hour, inshallah, which all being well will be tomorrow, is going to be particularly about khufs, okay, which the questioner is asking that there are now many types of socks available which have been marketed as Sharia compliant, or they're described as waterproof, or whatever. How do we decide, you know, what is wipeable or what is not wipeable? Back in the day, it was nice and simple. We had the old kind of leather hoofs, the ones which had the zip on the side and the little clip button at the top. But now the material is, you know, material technology is advancing. Leather is not the only type of sock which is firm and waterproofish, or water resistant at least, that will prevent water getting through, and it meets, and you can walk in it for extra, so it meets all the criteria. Now you're seeing lots of ranges coming out, lots of different companies making things, not only Muslim companies but also hiking companies that know that you know hikers need their feet to stay dry when they go hiking with their big boots and, you know, hiking across marshes and hills and mountains. So now there's some kind of confusion as to what is valid, what isn't valid. So that will be the next fiqh hour, which we're going to look at and explore this topic, inshallah. So last couple of minutes, people, if we've got another question, then please put it on. Otherwise, I can request your permission, your ijaza, and we will touch upon khufs for tomorrow, inshallah. So Jazakallah khair for tuning in, people. Please do share the links and to share the videos. And inshallah, all being well, we will see you same time, same place for our fiqh hour. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.